I think so. Is it on? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Good morning.
Okay. Good morning. I think in the interest of all of your time, we're going to get started this morning. Very quickly, today marks the end of our PFA giving campaign. Thank you to all of you who have donated. If for some reason if you haven't joined and you'd like to get your directory, Kim and Jen can help you over there on the side table. And I'm Claire Coyone, and this is Taylor Benevento, and we're in charge of 11th grade networking. And this morning we have Sue Carroll, who's the College and Career Center Coordinator, and Susan Lency, who's one of our fabulous guidance counselors, here to talk to you about how to make the most of your college road trips with your students.
Well, Susan and I, this is the Susan Show. Born the same year.
A few years back.
We're both grandmothers, so although we'll be as empathetic with what you're going through, it's all good when you get to be at our end, trust me.
And it all works out.
It all works out. It all works out. We're very happy to be here again. This is my 17th college road trip conversation, and it's my favorite of all the chats that I do every year because it's so exciting that, believe it or not, the adventure is really beginning, and it is quite a great adventure. And gosh, colleges look great. If you already have somebody in college, you already know that they are completely different than when you went to college. Colleges that you probably wouldn't have gone to are now in the top tier of colleges. The landscape has changed in the 17 years that I have done my job. And so we're excited about telling you a little bit of what you can do to make the next few months ahead a little easier. And we're going to start off with talking about PSATs, which will be on Saturday, October 19th, if your child has registered. If your child has not registered, Elvis has left the building. And the test is 2 hours and 45 minutes long under regular time. They need several sharpened number 2 pencils. They need a calculator, probably a good idea to put some new batteries in it, and they need a photo ID. So if they have a driver's license, Wonderbar. If they do not, they would need to have their school ID, okay? The PSAT is a practice test, and Susan's going to tell you a little bit more about the scores.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the nice introduction. We don't always get introduced as fabulous, but
They don't know you yet, that's why.
I wonder how many of you came and joined us last spring for the presentation from Summit on preparing a testing plan. Yeah. We're going to talk about testing, and our advice hasn't changed on testing. And in fact, if anything, for me, it was cemented. I just got back, Wednesday through Saturday, I was in Louisville for the National Association of College Admissions Counselors meeting, a small gathering of 6,000 or so admissions counselors from both sides, actually all sides of the table. There were college admissions representatives. There were many school counselors. There were also private counselors there as well, or independent counselors is the proper term. And I went to a couple of sessions, and we'll talk about testing, obviously, but as we talk about testing, I want us to keep in mind that every one of them always says the same thing, and grades trump testing by a long shot, right? Many schools now are test optional, and test scores are important, and we've worked on that with your children, and you know that, but they're not everything. So when we talk about the PSAT, as Susan said, it's October 19th. In mid-December, you're going to get scores returned for your juniors, and that comes via an email. They can, at that time, log in, take a look. What we love most about the PSATs in the recent years is that they can not only see scores, but they can connect to Khan Academy, which is a free prep source, and they can look at what areas, that will help them diagnose, we sound so medical, what areas they need work in. If their math score was really high, They might want to focus more attention on the critical reading section, or whatever we call it now, evidence-based reading, and begin to use those tests. I know, and we all know, that testing has been sort of moved up in timelines. We still don't see the need for students to take too many tests this fall besides the PSAT, but we do know that some students do. Recruited athletes in particular are advised to take tests earlier, but for the most part, winter tests are really a good way to proceed here. We hope our juniors are really getting in the swing of their junior courses, and again, that's the most important thing they can do this fall. So most juniors, we've advised all juniors to take the PSAT. Now, at the same time, many of you may have, as we discussed in the sophomore meeting, gone and taken some sort of diagnostic test so that your student knows whether they prefer the ACT or the SAT, and there's still plenty of time to do that. Most of the testing agencies downtown do offer those kinds of diagnostic tests on a Saturday morning. In school in March, your juniors will take the SAT as their Connecticut state standardized test. So they will have a shot at the SAT, whether they choose that as their preferred test or not. 2 or 3 times is really max, we suggest, on a particular test, and there is really no need to take 3 of one and 3 of another. We suggest picking one at some point in the process and then preparing for that as much as it works in your student's schedule, and then sticking to 2 or 3 times. All research shows that after the second or third time, scores do not rise considerably. So to spend that much time on test taking is probably not the best use of your student's time. Many schools, there's something, 2 things. As we say, many schools are test optional now. We suggest if you have a student who doesn't test that well and you're thinking about going test optional, that the student should come to their counselor to talk about what that means. Normally, if the student's scores are within the average, the 50% range of what a college accepts from us, we will say submit the scores. But that's an individual conversation you should have with your school counselor. On scores, self-reported scores is something relatively new these last couple of years. Many schools will now allow you, as you're applying, to self-report your scores. That means you write down your highest, I think they're just asking, the highest evidence-based reading score, the highest math score, and then later, if you get in, they will make you verify the test scores by sending them from the test organization. Historically, you had to send all the scores ahead. Not all schools are doing it now, so this is one where we have to ask the students to read the fine print about what that particular school that they're applying to wants. Most colleges, pretty much everybody super scores the SAT. I think you all probably know what that means, but it always bears repeating. It means that they cherry pick the highest critical reading score, or evidence-based reading. I'm stuck in the critical reading. The evidence-based reading and the highest math, and put them together, and that is the score that is reported for the student. Many colleges now have moved to superscore the ACT, but that is not as uniform. So that's another thing worth asking as you go. I think that's all of the testing.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll obviously take questions at the end so we can answer those. But I do want to say, if you're a student, I worry about students at this time in the process, because PSATs can be really encouraging or they can be really discouraging. They are just a practice, and like anything, it means once you get the scores, you can see where you may need to work a little bit more. I worry about kids feeling really less than around the testing process, and that's just something to watch. Test scores are 1 day in time, or 2 days in time, or 3 days in time, and they're important, but we need to put them in their proper perspective for the students, because students walk around here talking about test scores and bemoaning the fact, oh, I only got a 680, or I only got a 7. You know, that's painful for most kids. So if you can talk with your kids about test scores being what they are, I think that's a lesson I've learned over a long period of time here.
Right. The only other ththing that I would add is that the March SAT,
right.
which you don't pay for, your tax dollars have paid for it already. Wish that were true of the entire process, right? It doesn't have an essay component. Nor does the PSAT have an essay component. But fewer and fewer schools are even requiring this essay. It's scary how few colleges require it. So before you go and sign up for one with a essay, check out, at that point you will have met with your guidance counselor, and your student will have an initial list of colleges. It might be an unnecessary addition to a later test, okay? And again, a big plug for Khan Academy. New Canaan ranks in the state of Connecticut as one of the lowest participators in Khan Academy. Your kids are already well familiar with it. I know the wisdom here is, well, let's go hire someone. Okay, Khan Academy works, and it's F-R-E-E. So a word to having your child link up to Khan Academy. So the next thing is, how many people have already started looking at colleges with this student, not with other older kids? Great. Okay, good. So just bear with me then.
How many of you have had a child go through the process before? All right.
Yeah, look at, look at how
those
sane they look.
Those are your best friends, people.
Yeah.
They'll assure you it works out.
It works
right?
out. So this is really, I think, the fun part. I still remember walking around college campuses with my daughter, and her being humiliated by all my husband's questions, and me thinking, God, why aren't I in college? Because the boys were so cute. And it really is. It's amazing what colleges have done to themselves as far as really giving your student, besides the richness of the academic life, but everything else that is on campus is really, really amazing. And you just have to hope that your kids actually will take advantage of it all, because it really is terrific. So the biggest determination is, does your student want cows or taxi cabs? That's probably what it really breaks down to. Are they looking for a suburban campus? Do they want something right in the heart of a city? Do they want bucolic pastures where the only thing available for entertainment outside the campus is the state fair? These are things that a 16-year-old is going to start to be thinking about if they haven't already. And they pretty much will know how they feel about these things when they actually get onto the campus. They will either see smokestacks and go, I'm not getting out of the car, or, gosh, this is great. This is exactly what I thought colleges would look like. Every college has tours, guided tours, produced in the admissions office with someone that might be paid actually to give the tour, or might be a volunteer student. You can sign up online. This is something that a parent can do. Sign up online for the tour. The tour is usually an hour long. The information session attached to the tour is another hour. This time, actually it starts with the PSAT, that you need to remind your student to constantly use their proper legal given name. If they are Jack but really John, they need to be John. Even though when you speak to them on the tour, they won't know who they are, because that's not what they go by. But your child's going to be tracked now, especially at smaller liberal arts colleges, and you want to be tracked, and at some point, the SATs or the ACTs, recommendations, and application all have to go under this proper legal name. So that's something to keep in mind. You sign up for an information session and tour, and you proceed to walk around the campus. You'll see dorm rooms, you'll see academic buildings, you'll see rock walls and Starbucks, and you'll ooh as if you
Chick-fil-A's. You'll see
Chick-fil-A's,
Chick-fil-A.
yeah, especially if you go below the Mason-Dixon line, and you will ooh and ah over them as if you had never seen a Chick-fil-A before. And that Chick-fil-A will come with a price tag of $70,000 a year, but it'll be free because it'll be included in your meal plan. So. Your student, as you make these appointments, your student might also be offered an interview at a smaller liberal arts college while they're there. We do offer an interview workshop in April, right before April breaks, since that seems to be when most college visits happen in volume. And your junior is more than welcome. That information will be forthcoming closer to the date of the interview workshop. And then senior year, when things get pretty serious, we do mock interviews in my office. We're happy to do that. So the biggest advice for you all is to stop talking when you leave the college tour. Give your children a chance to process what they've seen. If you're doing the car trip, then it's not silly for a student to have a notebook in the back seat of the car where they can jot down their thoughts. As unique as colleges would like to think they all start to look alike after a while. And so it would be helpful if you could get back to the car or to the airport without going, God, that place was great, I loved it. What do you think? Let your child tell you what they think when they're ready to tell you. And it sounds like a no-brainer, but your enthusiasm, which is rightfully placed, or your displeasure if the school is not up to your standards, but let that be your opinion for the time being. In a couple of weeks, you can say, well, what did you think of our trip? What were the highs and the lows? They need to start absorbing and digesting this information. If you don't give them a chance to do that, the rest of the process will fall apart, because this is them owning what they're looking at. So, sure.
It's also them figuring things out. Susan's heard me tell this story a number of times, but my oldest daughter, who's 35 now, was certain she wanted to go to a large school in the South. So she was the first child, and this was a counselor mother, so I took her all over, including across mountains, and ended up in places I'd never even been. And at which point she said to me on one of the schools, I don't even want to get out of the car. And I said, we're getting out of the car. Brooke is my eldest daughter. She ended up at a small school in the north, right? I kind of knew from the beginning that was probably the right place for her, but I had been advised by many, experienced colleagues to keep that to myself for a while. And she had to come to that realization for herself. I don't know why a big school in the South was what she had originally thought. Probably the weather, I don't know, but she ended up in Vermont. I mean, so she was 16 when we started the process, 17. She grew a lot in that process, and I think that's what Sue says exactly. This should be their process. It's fun to go to these college campuses now. They are amazing, but we don't get to go. So as much as we're enthusiastic about it, we can let them know later when they say, I really did like, and you're like, yeah, me too. But I think it's can be fraught with a little bit too much of our opinion if we're not careful. For me, it was especially hard that first child. After that, I got a little better. Mm-hmm.
Well, also another thing, your child will have their phone on them, because if not, that means that it was surgically removed. So the thing about that is that if their phone is on them, they are not fully engaged in what's happening. And that's why I say a notebook, not putting notes on the phone. Some kids say, I'm going to take pictures of the campus. Okay, you'll get 5 view books in the mail. You don't really need to take pictures. But I can't stress that enough. The same for you. Don't be on your phone. Don't even bring it with you. Turn it off. And make it a little standard family fare of, we're not going to be on our phones while we're walking around. You don't need to be distracted. And also, all eyes are on you and your child. They might not appear to be, but they are. And the college is getting to know your kids, just like your kids are getting to know the college. So be present during this. The technology piece is very new in the last 5 years to the distraction that happens on touring campuses. And it's important that you kind of talk about it with your kids beforehand, that you're all in on this. You know, your behavior and their behavior will be one. And you're going to really concentrate on this to give them time so that they can focus on the tour and that you can discuss it at a later date with them. It probably is a great idea also at this time, if they're going to use their school email, that's great, although it seems it's been my experience that they really don't read it. And that's a serious thing. I suggest setting up a Gmail account with, Susan Carroll College at gmail.com and have that be your students, not you, your students' go-to email address that they will commit to checking, once a week. Because the college, number one way that they will communicate with your students is still via email. If you allow them knowledge of your child's phone number, they will text them. I don't suggest that because your child will be inundated. So I suggest an email with your student's name, put college or something that will define it from their other 15 emails that they don't check, and use that, okay? And in fact, that would be the email that you would use to sign up for college tours and any other information. Once you start going to the colleges, also when you check the box, your student checks the box on the PSAD, allowing information to be sent to them, your child is going to start to be inundated with information, with propaganda, marketing materials from the college. So figure out what you're going to do about that. We literally kept one of the mail bins from a vacation and just kept tossing stuff in it. And when after all the visits were sort of made, we hauled it out to the dining room table. And I said to my daughter, have at it. What are we keeping? What did you like? What didn't you? And it was really good for her to physically go through this and sort of make her own decision. And I was sort of sad to see some schools that ended up in the garbage. Probably not as sad as the schools would have been, but it was really a very good process. So expect the materials to come forth. They will be sent via email also, but colleges still send the hard stuff. Okay? It's probably not a bad idea also. There is a piece of Naviance under the Do What You Are, about me, actually, that has a resume builder. I hate calling it even a resume. To me, it's an activity sheet. But it's also probably a good idea for your junior to start thinking about reflecting what they've done since freshman year, more things that were not necessarily one-time events, like I, tried track for a week and then didn't see the season out, because when your child is offered, for example, an interview on campus, sort of spur of the moment, often kids are left sort of unable to answer questions even though they know what they've done for the last couple of years. I think the process of actually putting it in this activity sheet is very, very helpful at this point, okay? So that's something that would be helpful to make the visits a little easier if they are pulled in for an interview. I have up here a list of itineraries that we've put together. I've become an expert on geographic swarming of colleges, so I'm always happy to help out. But yeah, I think that any weekend that you have free, it doesn't have to be going down to North Carolina. At this point, you're just in at the prospective dating stages, and so why not drive up to UConn? How could you not go to your state university just to see what your state university has to offer? It might not be the right place for your kids, but boy, it's an impressive place. And that's a place where actually there are cows on campus. So also, Fairfield U. Fordham in New York. I mean, go down to NYU. That will be the first. Do you really want a city school? Oh, yeah. Oh yeah. And then you get down there and you're like, wow, there's stuff on the ground here. It's kind of doesn't look like Disney World. So don't necessarily, right at this point, just look around. And if you're in an area where there is a college, why not go visit the college? It's probably the best way to start figuring out exactly what your student is looking for as far as size and location and perhaps field of study are concerned. And as the time progresses through junior year, it will become more specific. So that's my thoughts on looking at colleges.
I think I would add just one thing to that. We talk all the time with our students about looking further afield than you might have originally thought you would. And I have to say, in the however many years I've been here, that students have branched out to different geographic areas, to different kinds of schools. I was reminded at this big conference that it's really a handful of schools that are highly, highly selective, right? And many of our students in this town go to those schools, but there are many, many hundreds and hundreds of schools where when you talk to people who went to those schools, they had remarkable experiences. So I think that that's the sort of mindset that you want to go into it with, is to be a little bit broad-reaching in terms of what's acceptable. What saddens me most is if a student says to me, well, my dad said I can't apply there, he doesn't know about it. Well, okay, but if you want to open your eyes a little bit and look a little broader, that may be a good answer to this whole sort of overly hyped up selective college admissions piece.
Yeah, that's very, very.
I mean, I was blown away and I'm sorry I keep going back to it, but this conference, you walked into this enormous exhibition hall, and I think every college in the world was there, alphabetically listed. And it was remarkable to see all the different things that were offered and all of the wonderful programs that are specific, or, it's just really a reminder that there is a lot to offer out there, and that what is important is what your student does when they go there, rather than the name of that college.
Yeah, there's 3,600 colleges just in the U.S. alone, and majority of colleges will take well over 60% of their applicants. So to limit yourself to 30 colleges, which is very typical of a New Canaan student, because you all talk, which, I was there, I did the same thing. And so you say, oh, these are the schools, and no, you can't believe what's out there. Again, I can't say enough about how fabulous colleges have really met the challenges of innovation and variety that, is this millennium. So, cast a wide net, at least initially.
Yeah.
It would be my best advice. So we're going to talk a little bit about how you pay for it. So Colgate,
with great pain,
with
I
great
might
pain,
add.
yeah, with great pain. I don't care how wealthy you are. Colgate is $72,800 now, $72,800. Now you get. I see there's a couple of Colgate parents in the room. You get a great education at Colgate. But I would submit to you that you could get a great education at Ohio Wesleyan, where if you could get into Colgate, you'd be a presidential scholar. So I don't, if you have not yet discussed with your junior on this road to adulthood how you're going to pay for college, you are missing an opportunity. I don't care if you've got the 529 and you've been saving and grandparents have been inputting, and that's all great. So if you can pay every year full freight, good for you. Your child still needs to know how that happened, that it wasn't a miracle, that it actually took toil and hard work and smart saving to do that. If financial aid is going to be a piece of the puzzle, then that should be discussed up front, because there's different ways of getting scholarship money and there's different ways of going about financial aid. So again, you're missing an opportunity if you don't discuss this. This is to me, a dining room table conversation where you sit without any other distractions and really talk about this, because your kids don't have a clue. I guarantee your kids don't have a clue. A student asked me the other day if the FAFSA was like a mortgage form. And I said, it actually was like a mortgage form. And I said, so you know about mortgages? She said, no, I just know that my parents pay it. And I said, well, then the similarities are very, 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 very real. So again, I can't say this enough. There is financial aid night on October 10th at 7 p.m. here. The guy that we have come in is great. And a FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. It is a form that you fill out that starts the ball rolling in consideration of financial aid. We paid for my daughter's college education. My hair was black then, and didn't seek financial aid. And 3 months into it, she came home and said, I've been offered a job as a research assistant in the history department, but you never filled out a FAFSA, and all jobs on campus, she went to Holy Cross, went through financial aid. And so she actually couldn't take this paid job, which would have been just a lovely little, So you might want to consider doing a FAFSA whether you are going to seek general financial aid or not, okay? And information will be forthcoming about how to do that. Also, one of the handouts is for FastWeb. There are two online companies, FastWeb and CAPEX, C-A-P-P-E-X, which are the national clearinghouses for scholarships. So it would take your student probably about 20 minutes to sit down and fill out the questionnaire on FastWeb. Again, another great use of that college email account. And it will ask very specific questions. Do you have a grandparent who fought in World War II? Do you play a musical instrument? Are you an athlete? Are you an artist? Because what it will do is it will cull the scholarships that are out there on a national level and send specifically to your students things that pertain to the questionnaire. And it works. I've seen kids actually, you have to write a couple of essays, but if you can get 5,000 here, 10,000 there, 2,500 here, it's pretty good. It's money that you're not paying back. Also, when senior year comes about, you will hear more about scholarships that are local to New Canaan. Again, that would be money that you don't have to pay back, and that is probably a little gentler as far as being able to get these scholarships. So financial aid and scholarships are a big piece of the information that you really should be discussing with your kids at this point. Do you have anything else to add?
No, but that's a great segue into talking about the individual meetings, family meetings that we will have after the first semester. So as you've seen, as you've gone along with your student, we have a really well-defined program, post-secondary planning process. And this year, we really dig down with them. You will receive an invitation probably towards the end of this semester, inviting you to come with your student to see your counselor. These meetings are set, I know everybody's schedules are difficult. These meetings are set up around your child's freeze because we don't like to pull them from class. If you have a conflict, obviously you'll need to reschedule with Mrs. Pocha, but we ask that you look as carefully as you can about getting there, because what happens is the students sometimes have limited freeze where they can meet. At that meeting, we will ask you ahead of time to fill out some forms for us, because anything we know ahead helps that meeting become more tailored. It's a perfect time for us to have the discussion about financial aid. And I'll tell you one of the main reasons. Students sometimes have in their minds and hearts, I'm doing early decision, even though they're not quite sure what early decision is. Early decision is a marriage. I always say to them, you propose, they say yes, all dating stops, and you're committed, right? Early action, not a commitment. You apply early, get the work. get the word, and you still can consider everything else. The problem for early decision with financial aid is that you have one package to compare to itself, right? The beauty of multiple offers is that you may have multiple financial packages to explore and compare. And so that's a discussion we should have early on. Believe me when I tell you that in my 12 years here, I have seen a tremendous uptick in people in our community, this community, who are saying, I can't do this. I mean, or I have 4 kids, or I have 3 kids. So many more people that were seeking financial aid before, there are many more people seeking financial aid, and there is a lot more discussion about it. So that should be part of our junior meeting. The meeting is really personally tailored. There are going to be some juniors, and I'll tell you, some of them have already been in my office since the end of sophomore year, wanting to talk about this process. That is not the norm. But many will be sort of really thinking about it and not worried about it, and they'll really want to ask a lot of questions. And so our meeting will be much more tailored to, okay, let's talk about that, what you've seen and where you're going and what your test score, really specific. If a student is just barely starting to think about this, we can talk about all the options, right? We call this the college process, but it's really the post-secondary planning process, because we have many students who do gap years or do PG years, or some do military. So we want to make clear to you that everybody may not be college going immediately. Granted, 90, however many percent, 97, 8% of our students are on to 4-year colleges, but we want this meeting to be tailored to you and your student. I always ask my parents, I do want to hear from you, but I'm going to put the student right next to me because I really want to hear from them. I want to hear from you as well, but I really want to hear from them what they're thinking. So again, it's part of that letting them own the process, and if they show us that they really aren't owning it, then we may have a discussion. I can say things to them that you can't. They won't stomp out on me if I say, do we think we're ready? Because I'm not feeling like you're interested, kind of. I mean, I can say things that you can't say. So I think that just keep mindful of that when we get into the junior meeting. The junior meeting is your individual meeting. Whoever wants to come from the family should come, but the student is still the focus of the meeting. We will, at that meeting, talk about where they are with their transcript, their grades. We will talk about where they are with their testing. We will make a plan for them to go and talk to 2 junior teachers, about writing letters of recommendation. Many colleges only require 1 letter, but we still advise our students to get 2, and I learned at this conference that's a good idea. We want them to ask those teachers this spring. We prefer junior teachers because they are knowing them most recently. Some students will come and say, I'd like to use a sophomore teacher. If a student is still involved with that teacher through Model UN, through debate, through something else, then we can sort of work with that. But the meeting is really individualized. I ask that they come with a list of colleges, a big list at this point, because we're in the exploratory phase. But I'm going to be realistic with them and with you about what a reach school looks like, what a target school looks like, and what a likely or favorable, formerly known as safety, looks like. And I think that's valuable. It's another thing that sometimes I think is harder for you to do than it is for me to do, because, and I mean, when I say me, I mean all of the counselors. Data doesn't tell the whole story, but data is pretty accurate for us on who the colleges are accepting from our school, and Naviance provides that data. And we're all good as counselors with there being a few reach schools on the list, but if the list has all reach schools and then a couple of favorable schools just thrown on as an afterthought, that's not a good list. often those favorable or likely schools, it always makes me smile. Students will come and that school offered them the presidential scholarship. And they're like, Mrs. Lindsay, they love me. And I'll say, and your parents love them now too. But that can suddenly go from being a favorable to being a sort of, wow, I can have real good opportunities at this school. So we will discuss all of that sort of thing. If you have something you want us to know before the meeting, and I'm speaking for all my colleagues here, I hope they're fine with this, but I always say to parents, if you have something you want me to know before I see you and your student, let me know that. If there's been a discussion and there's some area that's a little bit difficult, let me know, and then we can, be guiding. You know how I feel about this, any of you who I have your students. I don't ever want to be going behind the kids' backs, because it's important that we have a relationship with them. But if there's something that's guiding this, there's an elephant in the room with the college discussion, it's good for us to know that ahead of time. Okay? I think that's it on the junior appointments. There are, for a few students, this is a different process, as you all know. Recruited athletes go through a different process, as do students who may have some other talent that the college is after. If I heard it loud and clear one time, I heard it 50 times this last week, that one of the problems with the whole college admissions process is that it's not as transparent as it might seem. All of you have students who are well accomplished and high performing or have an area of interest. But whatever the college board of trustees wants that college to have in a given year, institutional imperatives, I believe is the term they use, our students can't bend themselves into that. Our students have to be the best them. If they're a recruited athlete, we will work with them along the way. If they're a performer, whatever. And the process is a little different. Sometimes those students do take their tests a little bit earlier because people want to see preliminary scores, because if your scores aren't above something, you might not be recruited. So those are the kinds of things we'll work individually with you. But this is a really personalized process, and every student here is really different. I always laugh when Susan says, bring the notebook and whatever, and sometimes, you'll say to them, so what did you think? And they'll be curled up in the back of your car in the fetal position on the way out of the college, because this is a lot, right? I mean, it's a big privilege. They know we've all expected this of them since they could walk, right? College. But for many of them, it's sort of like, oh, you mean I have to leave home? You mean I have to leave my family? I mean, I have to leave New Canaan? Some are saying to me, please, get me out. Others are just the opposite, and they're saying, I'm not ready. You can tell by their demeanor a lot of the times. But try to make the college visits fun. The bar is very low for being the parent who asks the dumb question. I mean, there are parents out there, you can't believe it sometimes. And I turn to my daughter a couple of times and say, see, I'm not that bad, right? I hear there's a lot of drinking here. And it's like the students sort of like fall under your student falls. The bar is low, but don't be that parent. You will be sometimes. But here's the thing. We all know that your hearts are in the right place. These are your children, and they're wonderful. They're wonderful young men and women. This does not define where they go in their lives, right? This doesn't define who they are as an adult. Doesn't define what kind of job. Yes, some places they might make contacts or whatever, but it doesn't define who we are as human beings. You all know that. And I worry for the kids sometimes that they think this is a definition. It's a edict on who they are, and it isn't. One last thing, and then we'll open for questions. When our kids were looking at colleges, we asked them to go survey 10 people we knew who might not be in our family.
We did this too.
Might be in our family, might be their closest friend's mother or father, and ask them what their path was. And we said to our kids, in your mind, pick somebody who you think is a successful human. Maybe they make money, maybe they don't. You think they're a successful human. And they came back to us, wow, Mom, Dad. They went to their regional school because that's what their family could afford at the time, and then they went to business school somewhere else. They went to their state school because they had to put themselves through school. What they saw was that there were a lot of different ways to get to places, and we know that, right? Was it a straight line for any of you? Has it been a straight, easy line for any of you? No, and there will be disappointment, but I've never seen a kid die in my office from disappointment, right? Early decisions come out and kids are disappointed and they come in and they grieve, thus stress balls and candy and all the things we have in our office. But they always bounce back. We say, okay, grieve 2 days, 3 days grieving, move on. They're good at this and we need to be too.
They're better at this than you are.
Than we are. Well, because we all have, you've raised them.
Yeah.
Your heart's, everybody's heart is in the right place. But it's a different process than we would remember ourselves, no matter how young you are as a parent. It's a different process. Over and over, colleges are trying to do different things in the world. They have a hemispheric initiative, and the admissions director has just come back from South America. We can't bend ourselves into that, right? But there are so many places. I want to be encouraging, not discouraging. There are so many schools, and our students end up at many of them. So I think that's all we have for now.
We're happy to answer any questions, and we will. Taylor and Claire have already invited us back for springtime also, so this isn't the last time you'll see our smiling faces. But if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them. Yeah?
So you talk about all these schools, 3,600.
Yep.
Do you suggest these schools to the child based on their transcript, or how would you know about them, I guess?
If your child has a list of schools, I guarantee the guidance counselor can say, oh, you like this school. Well, similar to that school is this, and this. And actually, Naviance can also help you
Match
schools like that. That will say, oh, you like Lehigh, who's coming today at 12:30. Okay, similar to Lehigh, with a business school and an engineering school and a liberal arts school, there's these other schools.
I think maybe you're talking about if they have no idea at all. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
If you're going somewhere, often people will say to me, we're going to DC just for a family something or other. And we thought maybe we'd look at Georgetown. And I'm usually diplomatic, but I'll say, well, you can look at Georgetown if it's such a cool area, whatever. But while you're there, let's look at Catholic and let's look at American and let's look at, because you want to have a range of schools. I think a student should start thinking. That's why it's important, as Mrs. Carroll said, to go start seeing a few things. If they think they want a city school, I think all counselors in our department will then take a look and say, okay, so you think you like political science in a city. How about this or that sort of thing? But they may not have any idea. As witness what I said before, a large school in the South, not so much. But I think you have to do a little bit of legwork to do that. But if your student wants to talk about it before the junior meeting, of course, have them go see their counselor. And we love to talk about that with them. But it's also a good place for us to get real right from the beginning. Yes, you can look at Georgetown, but here's what the average grade point average is for that school.
I also have a book in my office about that big. It's called the Book of Majors. And kids are astounded that, that I can reel off names of colleges. And then I don't want to say to them, well, that's because I looked in the book. But so if your student is looking, if they have a particular interest, they can come in. It'll take them 10 or 15 minutes in my office, and we can start giving them schools that have those kind of programs. I'm happy to do that.
Did we answer that? Okay.
Yeah. What else?
Oh, come on.
No,
No.
that's December.
You'll get.
You'll get the notice for
We
it.
don't start them till after first. There may be some in January, but most are in February and into March. We have seasons here in the counseling office, and this is senior season right now. Witness, if you go by, we should be serving lattes or something, because there there are many of them. So this is season, and then we move into some intense work with freshmen, and then the rest of the year is pretty much, and sophomores are part of that as well. But junior, it's February, March. But having said that, if your student wants to talk about college, there is no counselor who's going to say, no, we're not talking about college till February, right? And if you're going on a fall trip, you're spending Thanksgiving somewhere with your family, and you might have an extra day, then we can suggest some schools around that area. Yeah.
They would just set up an appointment?
Yeah, see Mrs. Pocha, the same way they always set up an appointment, see Mrs. Pocha, and a time when we're both free. We don't like them to miss classes for things, and obviously we have a schedule too. So if it's not an urgent thing, it might take them a little while, but they don't usually have to wait too long. I mean, if a student is taking the initiative to talk about this, and it's their initiative, I mean, I think that's the thing. It has to be, they have to want it, because if we try to push this conversation too early, there's a lot of, yeah.
Also, I should remind everyone that if you have a student who, because of theater or athletic commitments, can't look at colleges during the school year. I had a daughter who was a 3-sport athlete. We went during the summer, and everyone said, oh, you can't go looking at colleges during the summer. There are no kids there. Well, there are kids on college campuses, because every college rents out their college to some kind of summer program. So you see kids you see dorm rooms and everything. They're just not the typical college kids. So don't try to squeeze these things in, just
Right.
to sort of make them happen. Summer is a good time to look at colleges, and sometimes admissions offices have more time for you.
quieter, yeah.
Because they're a bit quieter.
Yeah, we
So,
did most of our looking in the summer as well in my
Yeah.
own family because of year-long commitments.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, good question, Mrs. Carroll.
Yeah.
Wait, she won't toot her own horn, but I will. We are so fortunate to have her in the College and Career Center. We have 200 reps, close to 200 reps who are coming to the College and Career Center and various other rooms this fall. And we owe it all to her connecting with all of those reps, and she'll tell you how you do it. But she won't toot her own horn, but I certainly will, because I have lots of colleagues who work in other places, and they'll say, you have how many reps coming to see you?
Well, and I've got great volunteers too, so I don't do it by myself. So we don't really encourage juniors to come to visits
Right.
here unless they have a free period, because really the college rep that's coming is usually 90% of the time, actually more than 90% of the time, is the first read for the college application. So they're very interested in talking to seniors whose applications are going to be in front of them in the next few weeks. So again, if your child has a free period, they can just come in and tell me that they want to come to the visit. And we do take attendance, and the attendance does go to Mrs. LaPola, the only person in the whole building I'm afraid of. So, so they have to make sure that they actually have a free period. So again, if they want to come, great. Most of our colleges come every year. We're lucky that they come back for more every year. So.
And there are very few juniors who do come.
Very few juniors. It's a rarity to have a junior there, and sometimes the junior is uncomfortable because the seniors are all there asking questions that they're not
specific.
really prepared
that
to
they're
even think
specific.
about. So,
Yeah, a lot of the questions at those meetings are specific to a major and
or an application question about an essay or something along those lines.
Greek life.
But again, if they have a free period, they can come. Yes, sir.
Does the college talk about themselves and then opens it up?
It depends. It depends. Sometimes it's just me and the rep, or one of my volunteers and the rep, and that's fun. But sometimes if it's a large crowd, like today at Lehigh, there'll be a large crowd, they'll run it much more like an information session. If it's a small crowd of about 10 kids, they actually will say, okay, how many have visited college? All kids will raise their hands. They'll say, okay, then forget the info session. What can I tell you about that you really need to know? And your kids are great. They might not ever ask a question when they're touring because they don't want to be seen as actually being able to speak. But when they get here for a visit, they ask good questions. So you should be very proud of how articulate they are. Yes, even the boys. So. What other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Two questions. How would juniors know about these college visits?
So they are, not only can the juniors know, but you can even know. So if you go to the school counseling website, under college counseling, on the left-hand side, you will see, it'll say college visits. If you click on that, you'll get a full calendar. College visits are also posted on Naviance. And then we do it old school. There's a list on the bulletin board outside my
A
office.
very long
Very
list.
long list.
The geographical list of schools and people are visiting?
It's right, you can have one right here, and if I run out, no one panic. Just email me, susan.carroll@ncps-k12.org, and I'm happy to send it to you electronically. Okay? Yes, sir?
In Naviance, if you have schools I'm looking for, is there somebody, someplace on that page you can see if that school is visiting?
Are you a plant? You must be a plant. So,
You've been
as-
through this before,
Yeah,
haven't you?
yeah, truth in advertising. So as soon as your kids start entering colleges into Naviance, do you all know what Naviance is? Because sometimes I'm personally annoyed when people throw out these terms and no one knows. So Naviance is the thing that's going to actually help manage your student's application, the documents around your student's application. If your child puts in, as they will this year, colleges I'm interested in, then while I'm sitting on the patio at Cape Cod making college appointments, it'll appear that Mrs. Lency, if she is the counselor, is sending them an email saying,
I get a lot of
saying Gettysburg is coming on October 2nd at 3 o'clock. Well, which is not going to happen. So yes, that's exactly right. If the schools are noted in Naviance, the student will receive an email from them a senior year to say, the college is coming, do you want to sign up for the visit?
Oh, there's one other thing I should mention that we will do with them. Last year, for the first time, we did a session in health classes for juniors.
This was
Where
awesome.
we had them start the Common App. We actually had them create a Common App account. We went through some of the early steps of it. So the way I like to describe it, for those of you who are doing this for the first time, is that there are in order for a college to consider your son or daughter for admission, they need information from, I call them the electronic cars. I used to call them cars, but then everything went electronic. The student car, the student vehicle, is the Common Application or the school's own application, because not all schools are on the Common App. Many have their own. There are a couple other types of applications, but for the most part, our students
787 colleges are on the Common
App.
Application.
Some are on their own, and you do that through their website, but that's their car. Our car here at the high school to get transcripts, teacher letters, my letter, forms, all that sort of stuff is Naviance. In Naviance, that list is really important to keep updated. A lot of kids will do their Common App list and then not attend to the making sure it's the same as their Naviance list. At some point, it syncs up. But if you can keep them revising their Naviance list, they will get the proper invitations. The third vehicle is the scores vehicle. And as we discussed, some schools are accepting self-reported, but most schools, or many schools, will still need you to report the scores. But those are details for next fall, not for right now. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes.
So there's a SAT in March, is there also one in December?
Yeah, there's an SAT in November, one in December. There are actually two SATs in March. There's one that the school will make your child take.
'Cause
for
it's
the
our state
exam,
standardized
state exam.
test.
And then 2 weeks before that, there's another one. So I think that's under cruel and unusual punishment to test twice in 1 month, but some kids do it. There are also actually, it's a very good point about the May SAT. The College Board, I believe, made a mistake in the date, and it says that there's a May 2nd SAT. I believe it's going to be May 8th. We're waiting for confirmation because they have it in 2 different places. They don't usually make mistakes like this, the College Board, so we were thrilled to see that they were fallible.
They're not.
Yeah, so it is October, November, December, March, especially for the state test, May, and June.
And the ACT has similar
Runs a very similar calendar.
dates.
What other questions? Yeah.
My question had something to do with that as well, because I noticed, in your experience, is there a disadvantage or advantage? Some of the SATs, you get the SAT back. So I noticed, like, if March is your first SAT and you're only taking it to the school, you don't get that one back, whereas the one 2 weeks before.
It wasn't that clever marketing on the SATs part that, oh, I think we have a contract with the state, oh, let's have, yeah, it makes me kind of cranky. Yeah, so you get information back with the PSAT too, which is actually pretty good. In fact, I think, the PSAT is one of the few good things that the College Board does, frankly, I'll be honest. So, yeah, if that's important, some tutors will ask for it. Some SAT tutors will say, oh, take it then. But here's the thing that horrifies me, and I think it horrifies Susan also. We have kids who are taking this test 5 and 6 times at 4 hours a time. That's 20 hours out of their life that they'll never get back. I'm old. Time is precious. So that part I don't understand. Like, why would you just take the test just to get the book back? Go sit for a practice SAT. They're pretty good. I mean, we always suggest Summit because, gosh, they're some of the nicest people in the world. But you can go any place and take this test, and you're going to get the information back then. And it's a time diagnostic test. So,
Yeah, be cautious about the over-testing. The colleges talk about it all of the time.
You wonder why your kids are exhausted.
Yeah.
5 or 6 times taking these tests. That's
And research just doesn't
and
bear out.
their scores are varying by 10 points, and that's
it
it.
doesn't really make a lot
I
of
don't know.
sense.
I just we say it, but no one listens. But that it's really true. They're way over tested. So, yeah. What other questions? Yes.
Is it true that some of the schools require all of the tests that you've taken and not just, and that you can't just submit the best test?
Yeah.
Well, the truth is that for most students, it would be nice if one sitting is when they got their highest in each area. That doesn't seem to be the case usually. Students do, many colleges will require all test scores be sent. Even if your student was the unusual student who had the highest critical reading or highest evidence-based reading and the highest math in the same seating, that's unusual. So you really need to send those scores so that they can pick the highest reading and highest, I'm just going to call them that for the sake of it, highest reading and highest math. The truth is, and we've had this affirmed a lot, people worry, kids worry they're going to see low scores. The colleges are not looking for low scores. Their rankings are not based on low scores, right? It behooves them to report high scores, right? Often, it's either done via computer, or it's done by an administrative assistant before it even gets to the reader, where the highest scores are picked and put together as that student's score. So if a college asks you to send all scores, send all scores.
Yeah, Georgetown asks to send all scores.
You don't want it to be found out later you didn't send all your scores if they asked for all your scores. That will be a disqualification.
And it sounds like such a silly thing, but your kids are going to sign, albeit electronically, next year on the Common App, that everything on that application is their work, nobody else's.
100% accurate.
And 100% accurate. And so this is such a silly thing to worry about. The rep from Amherst came last year and literally described the electronic process. They don't even see scores. Everything is run through this algorithm, and so when they're reading, and they read on a computer screen, 2 computer screens at this particular school. The screen in front of them is the common application and has the essay and also any other information, recommendations. The screen to their right has all numbers. It would have test scores and a copy of their transcript. That's all they see. Okay, so to worry about this would be a waste of your time. If the college says send us everything, it's a handful of colleges that want everything, but they're there just to annoy us, then go ahead and do that, okay?
And I find it is rare. I mean, students tend to get a higher math score in one sitting and then a higher reading score in another seating. It just seems to work out that way most of the time.
Anything else? Yeah.
Do the colleges, or
all come individually, or is there an event for multiple
Oh,
colleges?
good question.
Good, yeah, gosh, you guys are asking just all
Great
questions that we
questions.
have answers for. That's it's amazing. We refer to it in my office as Hell Week. So the week that for other schools is started by Columbus Day, so that would be October 14th. Through that Friday, there are 3 local college fairs college fairs are perfect, genius things for juniors to go to. Sometimes it's good if you, they might have an iPad on the table now where the student can put in their proper legal given name. Or you can maybe type up a list of labels. That's always good too, and you can give them a label. Wilton Weston hosts one on the Wednesday. Greenwich hosts one on the Thursday of that week at 7 p.m. at those schools. So those are great college fairs. We do not host one here, but you're more than welcome to go to those. And you can find information about them on their websites, those high school websites.
Typically, how many colleges will attend a fair?
Probably could be, Wilton and Greenwich are very well attended, so I would say probably 100, 150, 200. Yeah. Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
big fair up at Sacred Heart also, but it's during the school day, which is crazy, but it's during the school day. But that also is very well attended. You know, if you felt the need to pull your child out of school for it, which I would not suggest, but that they do have a lot of schools there too.
Colleges love college fairs
Yeah.
because it is I mean, first of all, it's a
Yeah.
one-stop shop. It's also, these people travel all over
Yeah.
their community. They know one another, and so they love the opportunity to sort of be there. The kids can pick up pens and swag and all kinds of,
Yeah.
Geographically, does it cover a big,
Yes, national,
Yeah.
national.
yeah.
so something more?
Yeah.
Yeah, and if a school is geographically difficult to get to, and, you know, traveling to California is not an easy thing, but maybe that's where your child belongs, at least that's what your child thinks.
Hawaii, usually.
Yeah, Hawaii is, we always have, Hawaii and Alaska. Or even Europe. You know, the other night we had a thing here for schools in Great Britain. So, there are other ways of seeing a college and letting a college know that you have seen the college. Every college has a virtual tour on it, and they're really, really great now. And so if your child's really interested in Loyola Marymount in LA, and it's just not in the family budget to be jetting out to LA for a weekend, then have your students sit and actually go through the virtual tour. And then look up on their website. The student can look up who the admissions rep is, or else come and ask me who the admissions rep is, and then send them a nice, again, the student, under maybe that college email I suggested, send them a letter saying, a little note saying, you know what, I'm not going to be able to make it to visit your campus, but I'm very intrigued by your TV broadcasting program. And I've taken your college, your virtual tour, and I hope that you will be visiting my high school next fall. But I'm very interested, so please put me on your mailing list, and do you have any other suggestions on how I can keep connected to you? They'll love that, okay? So I'm not suggesting that you shoot the wad and have to go to all of these colleges, because that's not realistic time or financially. So that's another great way. But your child has to do some work at their end, okay? Anything else? Well, it was lovely to spend the morning with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.